following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Handoff, Elliott plowing to the goal line. Barry, sacked by Lawrence. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
Now, your hosts, Rob Phillips, Heckma Harrison, Danny Sarek, and Kyle Yeomans.
It's another beautiful Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's another edition of Talkin Cowboys here on DallasCowboys.com. So glad you're all with us, and it is a beautiful day, but it's a better day to talk about your Dallas Cowboys, and we're going to do just that over the next 60 minutes or so. Kyle Yeomans, Heckma Harrison, Isaiah Stanback, and the great Rob Phillips joining us as always. And guys, just about 30 seconds before this open happened, I continued to put my foot in my mouth, which I feel like I've been doing a lot recently in terms of bets that have been made, and I just lost $10 to Heckma. But guys, I at least lived through the half marathon, which is great, but now I got to take Heckma to lunch, I guess.
$10 ain't gonna do it, Kyle. And see, you should have learned. You should learn about putting your foot in your mouth. That's just something you're doing in 2020, dog.
You gotta provide a little bit of entertainment, I guess, throughout the course of it. But as always, we're having some fun and excited to talk with Isaiah again. And Isaiah, I know you're at least probably out of the four of us here, you're the most qualified to have run maybe a half marathon or done something of the sort. But have you ever done long distance running before, or is that something that I need to hit you up about?
So one time I ran about 3 blocks because a pit bull got loose in the neighborhood.
Hey, that counts. That counts.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys count that or not, but that's about the extent of my long distance running.
He hit the 3 blocks. He was gone.
Rob's a big time runner, though.
I don't think I've run, period, in like 20 years because of my foot, man. I've got bad feet. I did run the mile back in high school, though, so I could have helped you in like 1997. Nice. Now, not so much.
You don't want to know how old I was in 1997. Let's throw that out there. But we're going to keep on moving along, not talking about running. We're going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and we're going to hit up Leighton Vander Esch and his health and the update there. We're going to talk about the cornerback position and even some of that offense as well, and some of the new look offense on that side of the football. But guys, I kind of wanted to keep some of
This is This is the point where I try and jump in and do my best Kyle impersonation. But obviously the topic is, because we're all bored in the house and in the house bored, ESPN has treated us to The Last Dance, and I don't know about you guys, but it was wonderful for me to be able to take a stroll back down memory lane to see the greatness of Michael Jordan. Rob, I'll start with you. What did you think about the series?
I think we're all about the same age, and man, it was just a blast from the past for me. I mean, I was about 12 years old when Jordan was doing his thing. I was a Knicks fan. I had the Knicks starter jacket.
Whoa!
I had all that.
How did you become a Knicks fan?
Actually, because Derek Harper of the Mavs.
Okay.
Mavs was so bad, and he left for New York and actually was on a winning team. And
that makes sense.
I carried my fandom over there. But yeah, it was incredible. It was a nice break for everybody, I think, to enjoy some type of sports. And it's got people talking about, the NFL. And could the NFL have a storyline that's worthy of a 10-hour documentary series? And I think the Dallas Cowboys would have one, personally. We did a mailbag question on that. I think absolutely there's an one for the Dallas Cowboys.
Woo! You talk about controversy. And thank God they didn't have social media back then during those days. But man, that would be awesome just to hear some of those stories. And if ESPN or anyone had any video clips of that team, because those guys were great to talk about dynasty. But what about for you, Isaiah? Just looking over The Last Dance.
Yeah, man. Over the last, first of all, I want to address the fact that Rob just admitted that he's a bandwagon fan in the past.
He did. He did.
It takes a man to admit that. So I want to give kudos on that.
Big time front runner, no question.
No, but same here, man. I mean, I don't remember how old I was, but I mean, I definitely remember watching that. I was definitely a basketball fan. I was a Seattle SuperSonics fan.
Yep.
They touched on that in episodes. Was that 7 and 8? Obviously Gary Payton and
Rain Man.
Mm-hmm. I had the bike jump haircut.
You had it. Awesome.
I just had the little rat tail comb. So I remember us getting our butts kicked in the finals that year, but the city being on fire. But Jordan was my dude, man. You couldn't tell me anything. Before I was a football player, I was a basketball and baseball guy. So basketball was my sport, man. And Jordan, his mentality, his ferociousness, his intensity, determination. He didn't care. I've been touted as a highly competitive individual. I don't know where that came from, but I may or may not be kind of competitive. So I resonated with him, right? I identified myself with Jordan and just how he carried himself to the game, and it's amazing that they were able to follow him and put that together, right? I don't know how long they've been sitting on all this, but they did a heck of a job putting it together, and they touched on a lot of points. I think there's something that all of us could have taken from that individually. Professions.
Oh yeah, when I looked at I was looking at The Last Dance with my son, and as we were talking earlier, I have a 13-year-old son that thinks he's pretty good at sports, and he's one of these kids that believe that you take an iPhone and run a few routes and add some rap lyrics to the back of it, and that makes you great, right? And so looking at The Last Dance and just showing him what it takes to be great, seeing Jordan in those first couple of episodes talk about getting cut, and the legendary story about him having to play JV as a sophomore, and just the whole story about Michael Jordan and what he's had to do to overcome and be as great as he is, I think is something of note. And that's why Fortune 500 companies pay guys like that thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to come in and talk to their sales team, because everybody wants to tap in to that championship pedigree. And what he was able to do in that competitive nature to get to the GOAT status, and it's a term that is used too often nowadays, greatest of all time, but we all got 10 hours to see and bear witness to what Michael Jordan's greatness was all about. I mean, man, he got up to play anybody. I mean, with the one where he's talking about George Karl walked past him, ignored him. A ball boy didn't pass him the ball doing shoot-arounds, and so he just took it out on anybody for whatever it was. But it's that killer instinct that I think we all were able to notice and see. And the refreshing thing about Michael Jordan is that, look, man, he may have been friends with guys off the court and all of that. And I'm not one of those guys who's all this, you got to be mean and all that stuff. But I just felt as though, man, it was that killer instinct that Michael Jordan had that makes him an international icon. Everybody recognizes that when the game's on the line, there's only one person that you want with the ball in their hand, and that's Michael Jordan. And so, look, how do we take that, bottle it up, and put it in our guys, right?
Heckma, that's kind of the way I want to tie this in with the Dallas Cowboys. You mentioned the killer instinct. Isaiah talked about the competitiveness. You talk about what made Michael Jordan great and what ended up making those 90s Bulls great. It's a lot of what you want in a team moving forward, even here in 2020. I mean, you can look 30 years down the road almost, and it's still something that you want in your franchise. You want in your team, and it seemed like maybe the 2019 Dallas Cowboys didn't necessarily have that. They didn't have that go-to guy. They didn't have that mentality, and you could chalk it up to the championship mentality or the Mamba mentality. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's the same sort of competitiveness and break-back type of work ethic, and it just seemed like maybe the locker room wasn't on the same page last year. You had Michael Bennett come in and then immediately had to stand up on a table in a locker room after a loss, and then that just kind of threw things out of whack as well. But Rob, I want to ask you the question of last year's Dallas Cowboys. Why wasn't it something like that? Whenever you had the talent, you had something positive in your direction, but you just weren't able to put it together.
Well, I think from a leadership standpoint, I mean, you can't equate what Michael Jordan presented in sports to anything nowadays. It's just not possible. I think from the Cowboys' perspective, they had a young leadership group last year, and guys like Jason Witten weren't as vocal in the past. I think they let some of the younger guys take over there, and I think they're still trying to settle in their roles there. I just think on the field, they didn't play. It wasn't so much locker room leadership as they didn't do enough winning things week to week on the field. They just defensively, I think some of the issues they had were due to trying to make big plays instead of maybe the spectacular over the solid type thing, and they weren't able to handle certain situations. I mean, Jason Garrett, I know he's not here anymore, but he was right in terms of handling adversity throughout the courses of games. And I don't think they handled that as well as they did a couple years ago. And that's when you don't do that, that's why you lose a bunch of close games. And that's, to me, that's what happened more so than leadership. Because I do think a guy like Dak Prescott, if you want to make a comparison to what we watched in that documentary, one of your best players is also one of your hardest workers. And I think that was Jordan's greatest gift, is that he even said in the doc, he won't ask anybody to do anything that he won't do himself. And I think that's very important to do. And I do think they have leadership on this team.
I was going to piggyback off your point, Rob. You made some great points, man. I think one of the things that I think that nobody was really expecting to gain from this particular series was the management that it required to manage men, right? And Phil Jackson, how he managed grown men with grown man problems and with different personalities, and how he was able to still facilitate all that and make it work, right? And we saw his management skills, especially with Rodman, right? And the issues the quote unquote issues that Rodman presented, right? But he understood Rodman. He understood what he needed, right? With each individual, he understood how he needed to let Jordan be Jordan, right? But he also knew how to bring everything together. So I think that element could possibly have been overlooked amongst all the greatness that Jordan was providing in this series. But managing of men, and I think McCarthy coming in, right, is going to be a big part of that. I think he's probably a better manager of men than Garrett was in the past, right? And I think that we're going to see that carry out throughout this upcoming season. But playing off of somebody that I consider, and most people would consider to be the GOAT of all-time football and all-time quarterbacks, is Tom Brady, right? Yeah. And the experience that I had with TV12 out in New England, and so as I was watching The Last Dance, I was seeing that resemblance, right? I was seeing that ferociousness, I was seeing that tenacity, that unwillingness to be okay with losing, that drive, that drive that's from within, right? The goal-oriented drive. Nothing else matters unless I get the ring. I don't care about a doggone AFC championship. I don't care about all the playoff runs. I care about that last result, which is holding up that doggone Lombardi trophy, right? And that's all that mattered. I mean, it was no different when we looked at Jordan, right? So I saw a lot of resemblances in terms of my particular experience with what we consider to be the GOAT in football.
Yeah, and Isaiah, I kind of wanted to piggyback off of that really quickly, just before we get to Heckma. But Isaiah, how did his mindset and how did his championship mentality, talking about Tom Brady, how did that affect you as a player?
Man, it helped me elevate my expectations of not only myself, but my environment. And I came, obviously, prior to going to New England, I was here in Dallas, right? So we had a ton of great talent, and individually, I saw an amazing drive within like Jason Witten. Individually, I saw amazing drive within like Terrell Owens. I saw greatness in the individual platform, but I didn't see it in the sense of being outspoken and people really following those people, right? It's one thing to have somebody great, but it's another thing for that person to be great, hold everybody to that expectation, and everybody be okay following that person. And I think that's what the difference was when I went to New England with TV12. He had all those intangibles that Witt and T.O. had in terms of drive and competitiveness and all the things that we always highlight. However, you got in line. right? You follow TB12, right? And he, same thing with Jordan. He's not going to ask you to do anything he's not doing, right? He's going to study harder than you. He's going to be there earlier than you, right? He's going to hold himself to a higher standard, right? Him and Belichick's going to call him out, right? He had a great manager of men, right? Belichick. So all those things, you see, it's kind of hard to find a great player in history that didn't have a great coach, right? That was kind of leading them along the way. So, I think all those things are the things that I identified with TB12 in my experience. He just outworked you, right? He didn't lose. I mean, I can tell you, before Friday practice or after Friday practices, we would go out there and we would have a competition to see who can punt the ball within the 5-yard line. And it was just myself, him, and Hoyer, and it was just competitive. It was crazy how it was just so simple of a thing, just to, hey, this is what we do on Fridays. But like I could tell he hated to lose, and I'm like, I like this dude. He's just like me.
And Isaiah, I get the impression that Tom probably is a guy that invents slights, just like Jordan did. Just anything to get himself going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Heck, they call it the not the billboard, but what do you call it? Whatever.
The bulletin board material?
Bulletin board.
You're always looking for that, right? And
absolutely.
Coach Belichick leaned on that heavily. I don't know if I'm telling his secrets, but he would wait for somebody on the
Please tell the secret.
He would wait for somebody on the opposing team to say something, or Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan was always talking, the big rivalry between the Patriots and the Jets, and Rex Ryan would say something crazy, and he would post it up. He would like, "Well, guys, I guess we're not good enough," or "Well, guys, I guess we're this right?"
Yeah.
And he was just in the meeting like that, right? Like, "Well, all right, we're going to practice." He'd be like, "Oh no, heck no, we're not in it like that," right?
Yeah.
So he just always he was the same way. He just sat back, and that's why you don't see him talk. He's not going to give anybody any bulletin board material, right? So he just lets everybody else do the talking, and then he's relying on you to have that internal drive to go out there and bust somebody in their mouth.
Yeah, I loved it. And the thing that I was, pointing out to my son is that, there are thousands of guys who have played the game of basketball and football, but there are a few that you can see that has that killer gene DNA like Michael Jordan has, like Tom Brady has, like all of the greats that have come through the game. And you're right, Isaiah. That's one of the things you don't think about is great coaching, great players. They almost hand in glove. They come together. When you think about a killer like Lawrence Taylor, and his coach Parcells being his coach. It just I just felt like when I was watching it and just looking at how you have guys like Michael Jordan play the game, and the younger generation taking witness to that, and also thinking about the Dallas Cowboys. And you're right, Rob, Dak Prescott is that guy that leads by example. He puts it on the line, and he's the guy that even with draft status, all of that stuff, that if the game is on the line, that Dak can get it done for you. And so I just, I'm hoping that all of our guys, and I'm sure they were watching the Last Dance, but I think it was just something great to witness for everyone that loves sports.
Now, my question is of course, with Michael Jordan and with the Last Dance and that whole Bulls dynasty, it took time to get to that point. It wasn't an overnight thing. They didn't watch a documentary like Heckma just said and then all of a sudden have a championship mentality. It took the preparation. It took all of the hard work leading up to that point. But my question is there's got to be supporting cast around it too. It can't just be one guy shouting from the rooftops. It's got to be a collective group effort. Who else needs to get involved? Because we've thrown Dak's name out there, and he's, of course, going to be the go-to. He's all eyes on him. He's the Cowboys quarterback. Sure, we're not comparing him to Michael Jordan. We're just talking about his mentality and his work ethic.
Yes.
However, you're gonna have to have some support group. And I know you could talk about the offense, but on the defensive side of the football, who do you want to step up? Who is the leader of that defense moving forward?
Tank Lawrence.
Okay.
Yeah, Tank Lawrence is your guy, and Tank Lawrence is the guy that coming from a small school and making it to the NFL. But what he's done on this level, I think what he's done, it speaks for itself, And so I see Tank Lawrence. If you're doing the correlation between Michael Jordan, he's your Dennis Rodman, right? He's your cleanup guy. And so there's a lot of role players. There's, who's your Scottie Pippen? I don't know, but I'm thinking Tank Lawrence, particular, being one of those role players or one of those leaders in conjunction with Dak Prescott.
I agree, and I think it's a hard comparison to make between the two sports because in basketball it takes one guy.
Yeah.
One guy that can really change the course of your entire team with a supporting cast around him. Man, Isaiah can speak to this better than anybody. This is the ultimate team sport, and you can have 5, you can have 10 great players, but if you don't have 1 to 53 guys that can step in and fill their roles, that's why we talk about depth so much and trying to withstand that, because it really takes an entire group over the course of a long season to do it. But to answer your question, Kyle, I think it starts with Tank because he's the senior guy on the defense in terms of a starting role, every down role. And then after that, a healthy Leighton Vander Esch and some of the other young guys have to continue to step forward.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on that. But one thing I want to point out is that, it is totally different, right? It's an amazing point in terms of the basketball. You got one guy that's a dog and he'll, take the whole team. But in football, you need, from my experience, you need one person in all 3 phases of the game to step up and take on that role, right? And usually on offensive side of the ball, we always say it needs to be the quarterback, right? On defense, everybody thinks about a guy like Ray Lewis, right? You need somebody who's going to be that vocal leader in the middle of the defense, right? And then you need a special teams dog, right? You need a special teams dog. And I can tell you guys, like when I played here in Dallas, it was Keith Davis.
Keith Davis, yeah.
KD was that dude, right? He, everybody else, I don't know how much the public knew about KD and how much he's talked, but when we got in that huddle, you knew KD was that dude, right? And you looked for KD, right? And that's a weight that you have to bear as a leader, and as he was a special teams leader, right? And on the offensive side of the ball, it was really like Witt. You know what I mean? For the whole offense, right? And for our particular receiver group, it was T.O. obviously. But you gotta have those individuals in those 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, and special teams, that everybody looks to. Because it's going to get hard. There's going to be some lulls in the game. There's going to be some parts that you really got to dig yourself out some holes. And when you're in those positions, you need that one steadfast individual that is not going to waver and that you can rely on to get you ready to roll, and that's going to come through. And that's what the Cowboys have to find. I don't think it's not all about role players. It's easy to fall in line if you have somebody that's leading.
That's a great point, Isaiah. I love that. It's easy to fall in line, but you got to have a leader out there, and I think both sides of the football are going to need a leader. Tank Lawrence, Dak Prescott, doesn't matter who it is, somebody who's going to have to step up. But for that defense, one of the biggest missing pieces to the 2019 squad is returning seemingly in 2020. We're going to talk about that next when we come back after a quick break here on Talkin Cowboys.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
Want to use what the pros use? How about the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black? Right now you can get the Jack Black Starter, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The starter includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites plus a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word TEAMJB. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys. The Jack Black Starter, $10, free shipping.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
It's right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus!
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score, September 2019.
Back to Talkin
It's Segment number 2 here of Talkin Cowboys here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Glad you're with us and hope you're staying safe out there, staying socially distanced as we are in our respective SWBC Mortgage Studios. Rob Phillips, Heckma Harrison, the great Isaiah Stanback, our resident Super Bowl champion, down in the bottom corner from myself. I'm Kyle Yeomans. And guys, we spent that last segment talking through The Last Dance and how that relates to the Dallas Cowboys. Not in the fact of making an extra documentary, because I think a 10-part series on the 90s Cowboys I would be glued to the screen if that were the case. Let's do it. I'm right there with you, Rob. Let's get it done. Let's find a way to do it. But more so in the championship mentality and the mentality that it takes to win titles, not just a title, but titles plural, because that's what Michael Jordan and that entire Bulls staff had. Now, moving on, but kind of staying similar, there was a big missing piece to this Dallas Cowboys defense in 2019, and that was Leighton Vander Esch. Young, healthy linebacker going into the season, really looking to take a next step in his second year with the Cowboys. Instead, it was derailed by a neck injury and a long road back. Let's just say that. A long road back all the way through, and an uncertain one at that. But some news kind of surfaced this week. Patrick Walker from CBS Sports threw out an article. There have been some other articles that have followed up since then. I know DallasCowboys.com has been on top of it as well. But Rob, what have you heard around Leighton Vander Esch and his health and what he anticipates for the 2020 season?
Yeah, I've heard he is very much indeed on schedule to be back in 2020. So everything he said in his interview on Jane Slater's podcast sounds on point. You know, I'm under the impression that it's my understanding that it's about a 4-month recovery for the surgery that he had on his neck. And so if you think about January, that's about the point he should be at here in mid-May. And now what that means for the off season, I don't think he was ever going to be really active in on-field stuff during a normal off-season program. I think they were always pointing towards training camp, and we'll see how that schedule turns out. But the signs are pointing in the right direction for him for sure.
Now, if he is healthy and he is going back, and heck, I'm going to go right to you here, but if he is healthy and he is coming back, what kind of presence would they be getting back in that defense?
Yeah, I believe that Leighton Vander Esch, you asked a question earlier about him missing, I believe it was 7 games that he missed last season, and I think that was significant to the defense. I mean, his presence was felt immediately his rookie year, and so it played a large impact, but let's just keep it real, guys. I mean, Leighton Vander Esch is, prior to the injury, wasn't typical wolf hunter form, right? There were some things where you could go back and just look at a few games where it was like, man, he had offensive, tackles and guards kind of blocking him to the Gatorade buckets. Not that drastic, but still, he was struggling a bit. But now that, we get this neck taken care of, and I'm one to believe that it was just, nerve damage. And if you've ever had a stinger, it is horrible. But typically, it subsides after a while, and it's just something that he tried to play through, obviously. But when they asked him the question about how he felt, he said, "I feel wonderful." And so anybody says I feel wonderful, I believe him, because, hey, ask me how I feel on any given day. It's I am good, but wonderful, yeah, you're feeling pretty good. And I look for him to be back and make an impact on this defense, because, like I said, his rookie season, man, he was a difference maker out there on the defense.
Yeah, his presence is a necessity. There's no question about it. I mean, he's a big kid. I was very skeptical. I can admit this. When they drafted him that high, I was very skeptical. Then I sat back and watched a young wolf just come out there and just be a dog.
Oh, gosh.
At that position of linebacker, there's some grown men coming to block you, right? So you're gonna get thrown into the Gatorade every now and then, and those are the things that really progress you and help you to not experience those things again, right? I'm gonna get off these blocks, right? I'm not gonna be the doggone talk of the locker room this week. But I mean, he's long, right? He's rangy. He's aggressive. He's efficient, right, with his tackling. I think he plays amazing with those other two guys in there. And I'm hoping, I really, really hope, as somebody who's been through a ton of injuries, I really hope that he's able to come back and be that same player, because it's more mental than it is physical a lot of times, and especially coming off a neck injury. And people need to understand at the linebacker position, you lead with your head, right? So instinctively, his whole life he's led with his head. Now instinctively he's going to have the urge to want to back off, right? Or I want to turn my head, right, and expose his shoulder, right? So I really hope that he's really taking that into account, because even though he might say I feel awesome, right, he hasn't hit nobody. Right, so the game changes when you take 6'4", 240 whatever pounds he is, and you run that into a 300-pound man. The game changes a little bit.
That's such an important point, because it is such a high impact position, and that's why you need linebacker depth, just because guys are in collisions all the time. But yeah, when he's at his best, he's like a tone setter on defense. Some of the plays he makes, he's such a physical player, and Jaylon Smith can be that way. They can raise the level of confidence on defense with a big hit. And that's what those guys provide when they're at their best.
Energy too. Both of those guys. Yeah.
You have both of those guys, Smith, and then you also throw in even Sean Lee, Joe Thomas, that whole linebacking core. There's a lot of question marks there. There still are. And whenever they're at their best, you can say it for pretty much all of those guys. When they're at their best, they're difference makers on the defense, and they always have been. That's what the linebacking position is. But with Leighton Vander Esch, it seems like when he's healthy, it makes Jaylon Smith a better player. It really does. And it's the same thing back and forth of what Sean Lee did for so many years in his prime with the Cowboys, is he made those around him better because he was able to do his job at an elevated surface from everybody else. Now, with Leighton Vander Esch, and Isaiah, you brought up the point of you can talk about it as much as you want. You can say, I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling great. But it's different whenever you get into game action. And especially with a neck injury, I don't know how much neck injuries you've had to be around throughout your career, but is there anything that sticks out to you in terms of people not necessarily coming back because of that specific area of the body?
Man, it's scary. It's a scary area. I've had 2 foot surgeries, 3 shoulder surgeries, a knee surgery, and an Achilles surgery. I've had everything all around the body, right? But the neck, I want no parts of that. I used to always say I don't want a knee surgery. Put the neck in number 1, right? One of my teammates that I respected highly, Ricardo Lockett, he had to shut it down, right, because of a neck injury. It was very scary. We talk about guys like Peyton Manning. If Peyton Manning didn't play the quarterback position, he would have shut it down. Right? So I mean, you talk about coming back from a neck injury because of everything runs through your spine, right? Everything runs through your spine. That's Grand Central Station. So if you hit somebody wrong, you heard Heck talking about a stinger. If you guys don't know what a stinger is when you hit somebody and the nerve gets pinched, right? So you pinch your nerve, right, and you lose all sensation. You lose all functionality. You lose all sensation. Literally, usually in that whole half of your body. So that it could have been something as simple as that, right? But it could have been worse, and we don't really know, right? They're not going to ever tell us what really was going down. But I hope that it was something very simple. But even then, those things come back. It takes one right angle of hitting somebody, right, with the proper amount of force, and you can be shut down again. So as we continue to talk about this depth, right, we have 3 guys that have a history of injuries.
Right?
We have 3 guys that have a history of injuries, and trust me, I hate putting the injury label on somebody because I had it, right? I had it, and you can't control it. However, as a manager, as a general manager, you need to prepare for the just in case, right? For the just in case. These guys have been predisposed to previous injuries. Hopefully that doesn't affect their future, but just in case it does, I need to make sure that we're okay as an organization in the case that they do go down.
Yeah, I believe that we are, Isaiah, because, dealing with the Dallas Cowboys, you get the best. And so Leighton Vander Esch has the best doctors looking at this, his neck. And so if there was any question that he was putting himself in danger by coming back to play, I just feel that it would be the responsibility of the franchise to say, I'm sorry, son, you got to shut it down. And he would probably go down as the greatest to never be. Leighton Vander Esch is that kind of game changer at the linebacker position. But you also talk about the depth, Kyle, and and that whole and what you said, Isaiah, about the injury label on this group. Jaylon Smith is the one guy to me that I feel this year he's gonna be more impactful than people know. And the reason being is because of Nolan and the way that this defense is going to be geared. It's going to allow him to play freely and play in different areas. If you go back and look at the tape from last year, guys, our linebackers were getting the business from those offensive linemen. And it was because our defensive linemen were just smaller guys that were having to hurry up and get, through that gap. And they were not gobbling up blocks. You look at what we have now with Poe and McCoy and Gallimore. Look, these are guys that are going to be like Pac-Man down there on the line, gobbling up those blocks and allowing for Leighton Vander Esch and Jaylon Smith to run to the ball. Now, look, there's been a lot that's been talked about Jaylon Smith actually changing positions because, 3-4, 4-3. But either way, I think that he is that guy that could be your Swiss Army knife, that could, line up outside a tank and rush the passer or, blitzing up the middle. He has that kind of talent. And let me just say this, guys. Jaylon Smith, for all of the knocks against Jaylon Smith, this guy came back from an injury that gets, that retires people. And it's a hard one to come back from drop foot, especially you talk about a neck injury, have drop foot and play linebacker, okay? And he's come back from that. Not only has he come back from that, he's come back from that and has made Pro Bowls. And so, and I'm going to jump out the cake when I say this. I know it, guys. But to me, there's no way that we were supposed to get Jaylon Smith if it were not for that Ohio State lineman pushing him in the back, all right? We would never have gotten that guy in the second round because he would have been one of the top 15 linebacker taken in the draft. And if you look at who he was at Notre Dame prior to that injury, he was the equivalent of an Isaiah Simmons before Isaiah Simmons because of his height, because of his range. I mean, he's fast enough to play out in pass coverage, out in the flat against tight ends, running backs, and slot receivers. He has that kind of ability. But just now, with the whole changing of the guard with the new defense coordinator, I just look for Jaylon Smith to be that guy to take that learning curve and definitely be somebody that that definitely has makes more plays and does a much better job this year in this new defense versus where he was last year.
Now, Heckma, I want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here because early in that you talked about Jaylon Smith and you said two things: he could rush the passer, or he could blitz up the middle. There's two things that he does the same thing in that regard. It's run forward. That's his best thing is he runs forward, he goes downhill, he's a downhill player, he always has been. I don't necessarily think he can cover the slot or even some of those faster tight ends as well as maybe a number one linebacker should. However, like you said, you talked about position change and whether it's 4-3 or 3-4, if he's playing downhill and Mike Nolan makes him play downhill, I think he's going to be successful. You can pair that with the defensive tackles. I agree with that point completely. I think these defensive tackles are going to take a huge load off of those shoulders.
Yeah, and I was talking about prior to the injury, prior to getting injured in college. And so, it's changed his game a lot. And he has to be a cerebral player because he's playing with a debilitation, basically, knowing that he had drop foot. And I know I've talked with Chris Beam about this and just his whole comeback, and Chris documented it. He's healed from it, but it has to be something that's in the back of his mind, just like, Isaiah alluded to about playing with a neck injury. Hey, it's all good when you're just hitting a pad, but it's completely different when you're running into a 300-pound man.
Now, watch this, Heckma. I'm going to tie this right back around. And Isaiah, I'm going to come to you first here. You talk about the psychological side of it and how there is a psychological aspect to these injuries. Yes, they're physical. Yes, the surgeries are something that is tactical. However, in your mind, you always have that in the back of it. You always know that you've had these injuries. You've been tagged with the injury bug. What kind of impact does that have on a player, and specifically in this case, Leighton Vander Esch, Isaiah?
I mean, for me, it made me a better person. It took me a long time to get over my foot injury, right? So you guys talking about the drop foot, right? It took me 12 months really to get back from my foot injury, right? When I blew my foot out, I had a total Liz Frank. I tore everything out of my
No thanks.
Yeah. So I got drafted with that. So when that's why I respect. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you. But it plays a huge part on you. Even once I got past that, I sustained multiple shoulder injuries to the same shoulder. right? And it changed me. I hate that I have to admit that, but it did change how aggressive I was. It changed the things that I would typically do prior to those injuries because I was always conscious of it. I didn't want to expose it, right? I didn't want to make myself vulnerable to potentially re-injuring it again. So it does, and again, we don't know how serious of an injury, Vander Esch's neck was, but hopefully it's something that he can just write off once he comes out, once training camp gets kicked off and he goes out there and hits his first dude and boom, I don't even feel nothing. Okay, he's confident again. And I hope it's just as simple as that. But if you ever re-injured something, trust me, it plays with your mind. It definitely plays with your mind. But, and one of the things I wanted to touch on was, you made a great point, Heck, about what we've done here in the offseason in terms of our front seven. You guys always hear me talking about how important of a role it is for Poe, McCoy, and all those guys that we've acquired and what they're going to allow our second level to do. And for people out there that are listening, if you guys don't understand how important that is, these guys, when you talk about those guys gobbling up offensive linemen, the offensive linemen are not going to be allowed, right? Because they're not going to be freed up to work up and have to and force our linebackers to take them on. Right, so we don't have to worry about Jaylon Smith and Leighton Vander Esch taking as much punishment as they did last year because these guys are going to be gobbled up. So they are going to be able to roam free. And to Rob's point, in terms of coverage, Rob, let's keep it real. There are these tight ends that are playing nowadays, no linebackers can cover them, right? No, they can't, right? So you're going to rely heavily on your safeties, right? And I think we're going to be a too high safety heavy team anyways. Because of what our front seven is going to allow for us to play. So it's really going to be on our guys in the secondary, Cheeto and Ha and those guys like that to be able to come down and play man to man.
Yeah, play more nickel dime in those situations. And but when they have struggled on defense the last couple years, it's been stopping the run. To you guys' point, I mean, you go back to like the 2018 game when they went up to Indy and just got smacked. Their linemen were on the second level so quickly, and that's I think that's what you guys are talking about. Yeah. As far as Vander Esch, just one more point on that. I will say, to Heck's point, he's in really good hands with the athletic training staff, doctors here, and I think he's a guy. He really wanted to keep playing last year, and I think he loves football so much. I think that will help with the psychological part of it, just being able to get back. And there are guys, and I won't say this is the exact same injury, but there have been guys in team history that have come back from neck surgery, Darryl Johnson, guys like that. So there's a history and a familiarity with the organization in doing it. So obviously that's the hope, and I think the Cowboys feel good about it. They definitely need him back. There's no question about that.
Hey, shout out to our training staff with the Cowboys. I probably know way too much about those guys, but Jim and Britt Brown and Dr. Cooper and those guys, I can tell you guys, having been through some of the greatest organizations in this league, that group right there is second to none. It's second to none. So for all you guys that may have question marks, okay, did they make the right decision? Those guys right there on top of their game.
Yeah, and that's huge. It's huge to be able to have that at your disposal, but you've also got to come back and execute and be on time and things like that of being with these timelines whenever it comes to this injuries. And hopefully Leighton Vander Esch is back. I went back yesterday. I'm going to go through all 16 games again from 2019, and I went back through week 1 yesterday, and man, when all those linebackers are firing on all cylinders, it is fun to watch. And they did so against the Giants last year, and I thought it was just it made me kind of sad because it was one of those, wow, this is a lot of fun to watch, but man, you knew what was coming with the injuries and some of the question marks later on down the line. Now, when we come back, we're going to do some more talking X's and O's. I've got 2 really big questions that I want answered about this upcoming season and different roles that are going to be played on the offensive side of the football. We'll talk about that next when we return here on Talkin Cowboys.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team. Get yours today in the Stadium Pro Shop or at Stetson.com.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
Right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor! Angus!
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score September 2019.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
So, you're shopping, and that's when you see it. Aisle 23. Dr. Pepper stacked from top to bottom as far as the eye can see. The phrase too good to be true comes to mind, yet there it is. A rich, delicious Dr. Pepper paradise. Wait, did that can of Dr. Pepper just open itself for you? They all are. As if to say, so nice to treat you. And even though it feels weird to talk to a can, you pick one up and say, it's so nice to be treated. Dr. Pepper, so nice to treat you.
Back to Talkin Cowboys.
One last segment here of Talking Cowboys here on DallasCowboys.com. So glad you're with us. Kyle Yeomans, Rob Phillips, Heckma Harrison, the great Isaiah Stanback, and it's time now to talk some X's and O's. And we did this last week, our first installment of a new segment, and it's specifically around what's happening on the football field and take away all the offseason garb that's around this Cowboys team and the storylines that have been around. We'll talk about that plenty in the first two segments, guys. We want to talk about football here. That's what this is about. This is about the gridiron. And first question is, what will Zeke's role be? Now, last week we talked about Tony Pollard and what his potential role could be as a wide receiver, more so than a running back. We talked about that in extent, but I want to talk about Ezekiel Elliott because of kind of the added talent around the passing game. CeeDee Lamb, of course, out of the draft, and you've got Blake Jarwin, who's seemingly tight end one. That should add some extra targets from Dak Prescott than he even got last year. But how are you going to find a way to get Ezekiel Elliott the ball? Rob, we'll start with you.
Well, I think with the weapons they've added in the passing game, as you said, I think they have the makings of a true pick-your-poison offense where they can literally take what the defense gives them. There's that much talent at the skill positions. But I do not worry about Zeke having a big role on this team. And really, the only thing I've got to do is go back to early in Mike McCarthy's career, pre-Packers, okay? I know he was the head coach there for a long time, and I know he was part of what you could say was a pass-happy offense with Aaron Rodgers. Now, that makes sense, logically, with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
When he was in New Orleans in early 2000s as the Saints offensive coordinator, Ricky Williams. Now, you remember the Saints trading their entire draft to get Ricky Williams. That would probably never happen again.
Right.
But there were a couple seasons in there where Ricky Williams had like 300-plus carries.
Yes.
And was the offense for them. And I think that shows Mike McCarthy is willing to use what he has from a personnel standpoint. And for that reason, I fully expect Zeke to be, have a big role as usual on this offense.
Go ahead, Isaiah. Oh, you gonna throw it to Heckma over here? I got it. All right. So I mean, guys, you asked that question, and I'm like everybody else. I've been bored in the house and in the house bored. So I've been on NFL Game Pass watching old.
You've been
Cowboy
on TikTok
games.
too, haven't you?
I have. I have. And it's just crazy. Watching Ezekiel Elliott, and man, he's just a generational running back, and what his role is going to be in this offense is a dog. He's going to be the pace setter for us and what this offense does. You saw last year where teams were still willing to play with extra DBs even when the Cowboys came out and run personnel. We have got to punish teams for doing that. And so with the whole pick your poison mantra that we have going here in Dallas now with CeeDee Lamb, that's the one thing that I believe that if teams play us like that, we have got to give them a healthy dose of Ezekiel Elliott. And you look at those games here, you look at the season, and like, say, for instance, games like against Baltimore. All right, we're in Baltimore in December. We don't know what that's going to be like as far as the weather, as far as the conditions. But I see Ezekiel Elliott getting 30 carries in that game. That's the Ezekiel Elliott game, because what that does is it keeps Lamar Jackson sipping Gatorade, you know? So those are the kind of things that I believe that Mike McCarthy he's going to be a difference maker in that. And just going over all those, you know, old games for the Dallas Cowboys. It was the play calling. It was getting Ezekiel Elliott in rhythm. We ran a lot on first downs, but then after that, you know, because we were behind on the sticks, we'd have to throw the ball to get a first down. And so I just look for that. You know, I look for Zeke to be a big part of what we're doing this year.
Yeah, heck, and Rob, like Freaky Zeke's gonna be Freaky Zeke, right? There's no change here. You just added more weapons, right? It doesn't even matter if they take the ball out of his hands a little bit more. He's still going to get the same production. He's that dude. We know he's that dude. I think that more than anything, he needs to be able to provide that consistency, and he needs to be able to provide the energy. I really don't see anybody else really providing energy on the offensive side of the ball, and momentum's such an intricate part of this game. You need him to be able to get those 7-yard, those 12-yard runs, and he needs to be able to get up and do this, right? Because everybody feeds off that, right? Yep. There's nobody. Cooper ain't gonna do it, right? You know what I'm saying? So if Cooper could have a 100-yard run, and he's still gonna be quiet, right? So you need somebody with that energy for everybody to feed off of. As actually going out managing everything, you need Zeke just to be consistent. When we give him the ball, we know we're gonna get positive yardage, and then he's gonna be that energy bus for everything else that we're doing on offense.
Do you think the energy could come from him in the receiving game as well? Because last year, I mean, he had 54 receptions, 68 targets, both of which were some of the tops of his career. But do you think he could bring that energy in the receiving game as well out of the backfield? Or is it strictly pound the rock, be the belt cow, and eat up some yards when you can?
More screens. More screens.
More screens, yeah.
More screens to Zeke. Good things happen when Zeke gets the ball in the screen game.
Rob is adamant about that. Let's go. More screens to Zeke.
I mean, damn, every time he gets one, it's like a 70-yard touchdown, it seems like, you know? But
against the Lions, maybe.
Yeah, true. I mean, quietly, I think he had a season where he had 75, 76 catches. He has that in his arsenal for sure.
Yeah, that's you say it, man. Those screen plays, and especially with the kind of speed that we have on the outside, running everybody off and then just sneaking Zeke underneath is something that you see the Cowboys doing. And again, that's just something he has in his arsenal. He's a great receiver out of the backfield, so we have to use every talent, everything that he has.
Yeah, there's not going to be any shortage. It doesn't matter how he gets the ball. It doesn't matter how anybody in this offense gets the ball. You know, like you guys talked about, we have the jack of all trades, the Swiss Army knife, as we refer to, of offenses. So it doesn't matter how they decide on getting everybody the rock. As long as people are getting positive yardage and and we're rolling this thing and we're able to strike fast when needed, we're able to withstand drives when needed, depending on who our opponent is. I think we have everything we need to really control that, right? If we're playing a Baltimore and Lamar and those guys are going to be striking fast, guess what? We need to be able to hit them when we need to hit them. If we need to keep somebody like that off the field, and guess what?
Yes.
Receivers, block your butts off and let's hand this thing off, right? So we can do whatever we want to do. I'm interested to see what we don't do. Right, more so than what we are going to do because you have so many options.
You do have a ton of options, and that's kind of the fun part about it, and that's what makes people so excited about this offense moving forward. Now, I want to put you guys in Kellen Moore's shoes, which at this point looks like it's a fun place to be because you've got a new coaching staff around you, and you've got a bunch of new talents. But I want to talk about the receiving position, and you could argue because of how talented this receiving core is, you don't necessarily even need Ezekiel Elliott to bring the energy in the passing game because you have enough energy in what Dak Prescott and these receivers and even Blake Jarwin at tight end could bring to the table. But I want to ask, who would you put in the slot? And the question is because whenever CeeDee Lamb was drafted, it was almost automatic. Let's throw CeeDee Lamb into the slot, but I want to play devil's advocate with that point a little bit, just based off of the fact that in college, or at least in 2019, CeeDee Lamb had 25 slot receptions, which is tied for 140th in the draft class. Then you turn around, you have slot yards. He was successful in the slot, 600-plus yards as a slot receiver, which was 46th. So you still have a kind of at least a disconnect in that regard of CeeDee Lamb being in the slot. But who would you put in the slot? And Heckma, we'll start with you, man.
Michael Gallup is open right now.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, man. Let's keep it real. to me, man, if I'm playing Kellen Moore, I come into this room of a talented group of wide receivers, and I know that these guys are all chomping at the bit to contribute. You draft CeeDee Lamb, and you know he's a number one receiver. So in essence, you have two number one receivers in Lamb and Cooper, and you have to treat them as such. If I'm Michael Gallup, I don't care where you put me. You put me in the slot, I'm going to manhandle a strong safety. There's no way. And if you look at our team right now, it would be the equivalent of having Xavier Woods on Michael Gallup in the slot. I think that's advantage Michael Gallup. Shout out to Xavier Woods. But I'm just saying, you talk about the talent level of a Michael Gallup. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But at the same time, I believe that it's going to be the translation that we're going to have from Mike McCarthy to this offense, and getting these guys in rhythm is what's going to be important. But that's a tough question. But I really feel like it doesn't matter which guy goes to the slot. But if I'm Michael Gallup, I want to go to be the slot receiver.
Yeah, it reminds me of my time when I was underneath Billy O'Brien, and when I was out there with myself, Joey Galloway, Wes Welker, Randy Moss. It really didn't matter who was where, and you had to learn everything, right? And that freedom for an offensive coordinator is absolutely everything, because now everything's on the table. I can call whatever formation I want to. I can mess around with defenses. I can run some motions. I can run motions to put guys in positions that they weren't necessarily in when we lined up, to create different matchups. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do to trick around and mess around with your defense. But in terms of just a staple, if we're going 3 wide receiver set, I agree with my guy Heck. I think that you put CD on the outside where he's comfortable coming into this league, and you allow Gallup with his speed. Hopefully, I'm interested to see how shifty he is in terms of lateral mobility and being able to get off the ball from inside the slot. But what you want, that's one thing that you want from a slot: somebody who's shifty, who can get open immediately, and then you also want somebody who can get on the safety's toes as fast as possible. Yeah. And I think that's what Gallup really presents from that position. And like we already attested to, you're going to be facing either their third best corner, right, or you're going to be facing their safety. So his ability to just blaze on by anybody and get on the toes of the safety, especially in single high safety, right, is going to cause some problems, because those outside guys, Coop and CD, will be able to eat all day long.
And you guys really hit on it. I mean, Mike McCarthy, one reason why he loved this pick so much was it adds to a stable of receivers that he thinks can play every position, play inside, out. That's what he does. That's what he did with his receivers in Green Bay. And so, I think you're going to see all of them kind of move around. I like CD's skill set for the slot personally, but you guys are right about Gallup, and Amari Cooper is a guy that can go inside and be effective playing the slot. He's done it here, and it also is a way to get him away from double coverage at times too. So I think you're going to see Amari in there. I think you may see all of them move around, because that's what McCarthy likes to do.
And I was a little surprised that you didn't say Cooper. Go ahead, Heckma.
No, I think the point that Rob makes about coverage being rolled to Amari Cooper and actually putting him in the slot, that's, a ton of offenses do that with their, number one guy. Put him in the slot, move him around. That was one of the arguments about Dez Bryant back in the day, is getting him from the outside and moving him around in this offense to give him more exposure in the offense. And so, again, just what Rob was saying, I think that is the biggest point, is that you take your lead dog and you look at any advantages that you have against defenses and you put him in there. All 3 of these guys are going to be interchangeable.
And do you see a lot of motion and you see a lot of trickery and things like that? Isaiah, I know you mentioned it, just switching things around and opening up the playbook. I think the playbook's as open as it ever has been for a guy like Kellen Moore to kind of do some of those gimmicky things pre-snap that could set yourself up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying it too, when I was with Billy O and we had all those receivers, right? We had a ridiculous amount of receivers, right? Everybody, as long as everybody's smart enough to learn all the formations, smart enough to learn all the different personnel groupings, you give that offensive coordinator pretty much a blank sheet, and he can do whatever he wants to. And you can line up in those just basic formations, Or guess what? I can line up with, CD outside, and guess what? Okay, we're coming up, CD's outside, Coop's on the outside, and Gallup's in the slot. All of a sudden, I motion CD down, and we're doing a switch release, and now all of a sudden, Gallup's going outside, and CD's working in on the inside of the linebacker. So you can do whatever the heck you want to, and motion is going to be a huge part of it, not only just because of declaration of coverages, but also from the standpoint of just matchups. You can create, if you have a smart offensive coordinator and you have versatile players, you can create the matchups that you want. And when you're able to do that, you can't be stopped.
It's going to be interesting because, like, the point is you could throw Cooper in the slot, you could throw Gallup in the slot, you could throw CeeDee Lamb in the slot, and all three should be successful enough to be able to have some impact, and by some impact, I mean quite a bit of impact for Dak Prescott and what he's able to do come this season. And we're running out of time here, guys, but just real quickly, looking ahead a little bit. Now, the next week on Talkin Cowboys, we're going to talk about the right defensive end spot, and there's going to be a couple of those names thrown in there, like an Aldon Smith, like a Randy Gregory, two guys that are looking to be reinstated, but you're also going to look at that Bradley and I pick from the 2020 draft class and what that actually means for that right defensive end spot. Is just real fast, rapid fire before we close things out. Is this defense better this year than last year on paper? Yes or no, before we get into next week's conversation and debate?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Heck,
you think so?
Yeah. What'd you say, Rob?
If those guys are reinstated, I say yes. And obviously they're optimistic about that. You still got to sort out the cornerback spot, man. We tried to rank all those guys last week on the website.
Who'd you have at one, Rob? Who'd you have at one, Rob?
We had Jordan Lewis one, actually.
Wow. Jordan Lewis at one.
No, which is a little strange, right? Because he's not he's not 6'5" playing cornerback.
Nope.
But they've got to sort that part out. But I think the front seven, yes, they got a chance to be better and make the defense better that way. I agree with you guys.
We're going to talk about that cornerback spot and the ranks that did come out in terms of that position next week as well. So there's going to be a lot of defensive talk next week while we talked a lot of offense this week. But that is going to do it here for Talkin Cowboys here on this Tuesday morning. Glad you've been with us throughout the entirety of the last hour. But for Heckma Harrison, for Isaiah Stanback, and for the great Rob Phillips, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you next week here on Talkin Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!